All right. So today is February 11th. Happy morning. Today we're going to talk about importance of fungal to bacterial ratios for soil health, which is very exciting, frontiers type of work. We have Jason Gearhart, who's training and almost done being a soil food web consultant. He's the business owner of Integrated Elements, LLC in Columbus in Bartholomew County. And he's a microbe farmer. And we're gonna have the statewide regional updates afterwards and Q&A with anything else, and resources and updates from the staff. So I'm gonna have Jason go ahead and start. I'm gonna stop sharing in just a second, Jason. There we go.
Can't see it. Oh, hold on just a second.
You're good.
Can you see it okay now?
You can.
Right there. Can you guys see the slideshow all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm Jason. And like Tommy says, I'm a microbe farmer. I make biocomplete compost, worm compost, and we're trying to figure out a way to do a potting mix as well. So I just want to kind of start off here with what is fungal to bacterial ratio? Why is this important? So when we talk about the fungal to bacterial ratio, we go F to B. So from here on out, I'll just define it as F to B. And what we're doing is we're measuring the biomass of the fungi and the bacteria within the substrate, within the sample that we're testing, to create that F to B. So that's the long and the short of it. Next, quick plant review. This is going to give us sort of a foundation for the rest of the presentation here. Plants invest a lot of energy into their root structure, okay? Depending on the plant, depends on how much. Weeds, for instance, will only invest 20% of their total energy into root structure. Vegetables, about 75%, lawns or grass, about 60%, and trees and bushes, about 80%. But of that total energy that's put into the roots, only half of that goes into the exudates itself. Okay. So it's pretty important if they spend a lot of energy into roots, but then also into the exudates itself. The exudates that's put out attracts the bacteria, the fungi, who in turn then use the alkaline and the acids to pull the nutrients off the sands, the silts, and the clays. So that'd be the parent material. So sand, silt, and clays is what we call parent material. Bacteria uses alkaline enzymes, and fungi use acid enzymes to pull off the nutrients and then store it in their body as a means to then feed the plant later on. Okay. So predators will then consume the bacteria and fungal hyphae, and their excretion, basically what they poop out, allows for this to be a plant available nutrient for the plant itself. So that's just the long and the short of it, the basic foundation right there. Moving on, why is F to B, hold on, yes. Why is F to B important and how does this affect the nitrogen cycle? Okay, one, fungal and bacteria produce glues. The bacteria produce a glue that helps pull together the micro or creates micro aggregate. So what it's doing is it's pulling organic material, sand, silts, clays, pulling them together into small little micro communities. And then the fungal hyphae move through the whole structure to then pull it all together to create a macro aggregate. This is important because it allows for, your larger pore spaces. You're building structure, And by building this structure, you're allowing water infiltration, you're allowing roots to move through. Since the roots do have to invest some energy into, maintaining structure within the soil, if you've got more pore spaces, you're going to allow those roots to get in easier, deeper, a little bit more cleanly. Just remember that if you've got compaction, then what you've got is a plant that can't go beyond that compaction layer if it's more than 150 psi. Unless you've got like carrots or, a plant that has a taproot, then I believe they can go through at least 300 psi. Does that sound right, guys?
Yep, 300.
So this is how it builds a structure. And the deeper down it goes, the more you get the biology in there, then what you're going to hit is more ability to create structure at that compaction layer and just going down and down and down, allowing for, better water infiltration, again, root structure. How far down can it go? We don't know. It just, we haven't found out yet. Which kind of leads me to tillage. I mean, urban soil health is really big on no-till, on cover crops. The reason why you want to have that structure in place is so that you're constantly feeding the soil. When you till, then you destroy that fungal community. It destroys that structure that you've built, and it puts things backwards in succession. I'll explain more about that here in a minute. So F2B also pulls the nutrients off the materials and stores it within their body. They're basically creating a bank. Now, it's not accessible to the plants yet, and that's why you need to have the predators in your system to pull and consume that and then release it into the soil near the plant roots, okay? Just to give you an idea of how important, particularly fungi is in your system, they did a study where they took 4 different substrates. Well, one was just the parent material. Then they added the parent material with organic matter. Then the third one they did bacteria, and the last one they did was just fungus within it. And they used oyster shell because they were going to try to test the retention of calcium. Poured the water through that. If it didn't have anything in it, if it was just parent material, it just washed it all away, unaccessible. Then if they put the water through the organic material and it held on to 5% of that calcium. Bacteria held on to only 3%, but fungus held on to 100% of that calcium. So just to give an example of its ability to hold on to nutrients and keep it within the system. F2B also is important as it affects the pH of the soil around the root structure. Okay. Again, you got your fungus. It produces acidic enzymes. Alkaline enzymes are produced by the bacteria. If a plant is going to communicate what it needs and it says, well, I need the pH to be here, then it's going to wake up those fungal components and those bacterial components around it to then create that balance that it needs right there. Okay. F2B is also important for the nitrogen cycle as well. We're going to get a little deep here, guys. So if you have a question, just pause and I'll try to answer as best I can. So anything that gets released by a predator when it consumes bacteria and fungi is NH4, ammonium. That's what gets released. If you're in a bacterially dominated field, that is to say, compaction, bare soil, or a very weedy soil, then what you've got is a highly bacterially dominated soil. This is then the bacteria that consumes the material is going to use that ammonium to then create a nitrifying enzyme that changes it from ammonium to nitrate. And that nitrate is what is going to be in your more alkaline dominated soils, your higher pH soils as well. So as you add a fungi into the system, then what it does is it creates the pH in a range that doesn't let these nitrifying bacteria do their job of just changing it to nitrate. It keeps ammonium is what it does. This helps to move things along in a succession here. So this next slide here is the soil biological succession that I want you guys to pay attention to here. On the far left, you've got your bacteria, highly bacteria, no fungi. You've got a more of a nitrate environment. This is where you've got an alkaline environment. Oh, I've lost my, oh, there it is. So that's where you've got your bare soil, your weeds, you've got a lot of compaction there. You start adding some fungi, it starts changing the type of nitrogen available. Okay. So in this area, you've got nitrate and ammonium working together. Then you move on to this other area here, which is your bushes, sort of on the edge of the forest. That would be where you're going to get your F to B into a higher ratio, like 2 to 1 or 5 to 1, a forest, and then an old growth forest right here. Okay.
Jason, I have a couple questions.
Yeah, sure.
Dave Nichter says, does Dr. Elaine have a formula or estimate for how many bacteria are counted in aggregates for microscopy?
Yes. Yeah. So do you want to know how much bacteria is, how do you determine how much bacteria is in the sample? Is that the question?
Think so. Dave, feel free to chime in at
Yes,
any.
sir. Yeah, just for quantifying bacteria in a sample. I'm new to microscopy. I just know it exists.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, Dave. How we do it, is we take a sample here, in a test tube, okay? And we typically will, depending on, how mucky it gets, for compost, I will use 10 milliliters of water, or I'm sorry, 1 milliliter of compost to then fill it up to 10 milliliters. Then we have to then dilute this out to like 1 to 1,000 to be able to count the amount of bacteria that's in there. And then typically you can either count the full field of view or you can do just a quarter of the field of view. And in the S map is what we call it, that what that will do is that will count within, based on your cover slip, based on, how many drops per milliliter. It'll give you the number of how much bacteria is in this particular sample. And then we also do the same thing when we count fungi, except we don't dilute it to but just that 1 to 10 ratio. And then it's got something in the system that counts it up and creates that ratio.
Right on. I was just wondering if like say the aggregate size in the soil sample is X amount of micrometers or whatever. Does is there a number of bacteria that represents because the aggregate doesn't exist without being colonized by bacteria?
Can you ask it in a different way, Dave? I'm not sure I'm
No.
understanding.
Yeah, so it's just something I heard Elaine say in passing was that aggregate only exists because it's glued together with glomalin and other things.
Yeah.
So you can count that aggregate in your field of view as bacteria, but I didn't know if there was a quantity you could give it.
I wouldn't count the aggregate within the field of view. I would just count the bacteria itself. It kind of gets destroyed or mixed up quite a bit when you shake it up. So you're not really going to see either like a micro aggregate or a macro aggregate or any kind of pathways. It's just suspending it in water to then be able to see it in that solution.
Right on. That helps me. Thank you. I
Okay.
hope I didn't derail your talk.
No, oh heavens no. I prefer to talk this way, to be honest with you. All right. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah. Um, Dave also follows up with, is there a measured effect on the molybdenum cycle in bacteria-dominated soils?
I don't have an answer for that, Dave. I'm sorry.
And then fungi creating an acidic enzyme. Fungi creating an acidic enzyme, these acids then work on the mineral component of soils to help them make them plant available.
Yeah, so what it does is it pulls the nutrients off of the substrate. Again, we go back to the plant roots themselves. The exudates is basically the communication. It says, hey, this is what I need. And it feeds basically, so the exudates feed the bacteria and the fungi. It's kind of like their food source. And in order for them to continue to feed off of the exudate, they've got to do their job, which is to pull nutrients off of the substrate. So then it stores it in its body, but it won't be plant available until a predator comes along and consumes them. Does that help?
Yeah,
Jason,
thanks for just reiterating that cycle. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
and
Uh,
can you articulate what that predator is?
Yeah, sure. So I can show you here in a bit, but like so for fungal components, you're looking at your beneficial nematodes, like your fungal feeding nematodes. Some microarthropods will chew on them. Worms will chew on them as well. For the bacteria, you're looking at amoeba, testate amoeba, flagellates, ciliates also will cycle nutrients, but ciliates will be an indication that your environment's going anaerobic, or it's lending or leading towards that environment there. And then you've got your other beneficial nematodes like your bacterial feeders that will also consume bacteria as well. Worms will consume bacteria.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. You want me to move on, or you guys got any more questions?
None in the chat, so I think you're good to go.
All right. So basically, you're targeting the biology of the plant you want. Where is that in the stage of succession? So if you guys kind of think about a plant that you want to grow, tomatoes, turnips, carrots, raspberries, whatever, you figure out where it is within that successional, the ecological succession. And that's what you want to target your F to B to get to. Okay. Um, what drives this succession? Basically, a change in the biology of the soil will drive the succession from compacted pathway to old growth forest. Remember that slide? It went all the way from one side to the other. How it's driven is what's in the biology of the soil. And how can you do this? The plant itself helps to determine the biology of the soil, but it can only do so much. I mean, it can feed out the exudates. It can go ahead and put those sugars out, and then it can have your bacteria and your fungal components available. And you may not have the right kind of fungus. The plant might say, I want this, but that's not in the environment. So that's where quality compost comes in. Is where you're going to throw on some compost, good compost, that's going to go ahead and start building up the biology of the soil, giving it more diversity, more of an opportunity to flush itself out and contribute to the system. Plants are going to feed the biology. The compost is also going to feed the soil and the biology, and then it's just going to loop back into the plants, which feed and then loop back into the soil, back into the plant, back into the soil. Okay. So that's what drives the succession. And this right here is just, little chart that kind of shows the successional stages. You got your bare parent, compacted soil, You're moving on, you start adding some of the biology into the soil, and then what you've got is an increase in the F to B. You're moving over here into the weeds where you've got, again, that high nitrate. You've got low oxygen, and that's where these nitrifying bacteria thrive to create that alkaline, high pH environment. As you start adding some more fungal components, you're getting into your early grasses, your bromus, your Bermuda. So don't think of like weeds and these early grasses as not beneficial. I mean, they serve a purpose. They're a food for the next stage of succession. Okay. One of the ways that you can tell if you've got really good biology in your field is if things start breaking down. You know, if you've got, we'll say just a field that doesn't break down, you don't have a lot of biology in your system, but if you have a field that's able to kind of consume that, then you've got an environment that's helping to feed the system, building organic material, a food source for the bacteria, the fungi, nematodes, beneficial nematodes, and protozoa. Moving on, mid grasses, vegetables. So vegetable gardener, you're going to want the F to B. Start leaning in this direction right here. Late successional grasses, row crops, that 1-to-1. And then, shrubs, vines, be like your raspberries, deciduous trees, and then onto an old growth forest. An old growth forest is the most productive ecosystem in the world. It needs no input. It just constantly is feeding itself.
Jason,
So,
I have a question here.
yeah, sure.
So if you go back to that last slide, I think it'll help people. So, do ciliates thrive on anaerobic bacteria specifically, or are they obligatory aerobes? So they outcompete aerobic predators in anaerobic conditions. And to help with that, they're facultative anaerobes, Dave.
That's a lot. So the ciliate is just an indication that it's moving into an anaerobic condition. So like if we're going to make a tea or if we're going to test our soil and we start seeing some ciliates in there, it's going to show us that you're leaning towards an anaerobic. It doesn't mean it's completely anaerobic. It could mean that there's just a pocket of anaerobic conditions. So remember, like when I talked about the macroaggregates, when it creates those pore spaces, sometimes it's going to create a pool, and that's where water can hang out. And if there's no water movement, then you've got an anaerobic situation there. I mean, but if you've got, a big field and only like one area there, that's fine. It's just, I believe what they'll do is just feed on just whatever bacteria is around there. I, what was the rest of the question?
Dave, feel free to chime in if you need a little bit more.
Sure. So I was wondering, are they anaerobic and only feed on anaerobic life, or do they just thrive in anaerobic conditions because other aerobes don't thrive? They outcompete them. Therefore present a larger population, telling me that it's an anaerobic condition.
Okay, one more time, because I think there's like several questions in there.
Okay. Let's see. So do they does their population boom, I guess, represent anaerobic conditions because aerobes are being outcompeted because they're not competing at their fullest capability.
That's correct. Yes, yes. Because what it does is because it's moving into an anaerobic situation, then they're competing for that. And I can't remember, you said something about like a facultative anaerobic. It's been a minute since I've gone through the biology on that.
Sure. Just
So
just wondering,
I,
like,
Yeah.
They're probably like, I don't know for sure. Are they can survive in aerobic and anaerobic, so they're probably present in aerobic.
Mhm.
It's just their population doesn't shout out to you and under the microscope like it does in anaerobic conditions.
Right. So if you see like one or two in your sample, I wouldn't get worried about it. And but if all of a sudden you're just like, you know, all you see is ciliates, then you're like, okay, we need to not use this right now. It's not
Right.
benefiting anybody.
So I've only pulled a few samples, but it's been ciliate heavy, and it's of my worm castings.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's telling me that my worm castings are saturated or compacted, and I need to get in there and harvest it or move it around, right?
That's what I would say. I would definitely I would agree with that. Maybe add some like wood chips or cardboard or something that's going to help hold the moisture in there. It just depends on what you feed them. If all you're feeding them is just food scraps and it's just really mucky and it starts stinking, then you're looking at an anaerobic situation, you know. So I like to when I use on my farm my worm bin. I just feed it biocomplete compost because I know what you feed a worm is what's going to come out of a worm. So if you feed highly bacterial food, you're going to get a highly bacterial product.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, no worries. Okay, next. All right. The importance of quality compost. So this is really important, you know, because it's an amendment. It's an organic amendment that has the biology on the substrate. It introduces more abundant diversity of beneficial microbes. Okay, this again is really important not to kill your beneficials. You want to build that soil structure there. Improves the presence of the predators because you need the predators in the system for that nutrient cycling. Okay. You also need to have all the bacteria and the fungi in the system to build that structure. Again, we're trying to decrease compaction. Let's see how far down we can go without those roots. And then it gives a head start to the plant succession. Again, you put your tomato plant in a field, it's going to start shooting out exudates and it needs a little bit of a boost. So that's where the compost is really going to help. Compost we use in a form of just straight on the ground, teas and extracts. So let me explain teas and extracts right now. Extract is what we use to pull off the microbes on the compost. It's basically just taking your compost, which is um, uh, oh, what am I trying to say? You can do it by putting it in a ball jar and then just shaking it up, and that will pull it off. You can do it by mechanically massaging in a micro, you know, like a mesh bag. You can use a paint mixer in a 5-gallon bucket. You know, then you can go, you know, $1,000, $2,000 up to get another extractor. But what gets pulled off is what we call an extract. It's just pulling the microbes off and letting them hang out in that water. Okay. Now, a tea is when we take that extract and we brew it. And this is where we add foods. You add foods like molasses. You add foods like oat flour. You add foods like kelp. These things are going to help boost the microorganisms that you want. So if you want to increase the bacteria count, you can add more sugars. If you want to increase the fungal component, then you're going to start adding like oat flour, kelp. Help me out, Tommy. There was one more that I can't remember.
Fish emulsion, emulsate.
So those things will help, but you also need to monitor what's going on underneath there. Okay. So that's why we use the microscope. The microscope is just an amazing tool. I mean, this is how you test what's underneath, what's been pulled off, what's in your soil. It's what's in your compost, what's in your teas, what's in your extracts. It gives a real-time picture of what's going on in that moment, you know. Soils are very dynamic. They're going to change through the seasons, you know. Um, and kind of need to know what's going on before you just start throwing some stuff on there is really how I look at it. And it's kind of fun, actually. It's kind of like my Instagram. I just throw it under there and start looking, seeing what's going on. So, show and tell time. Let me see if I can't do this here. So I just wanted to show, can you guys see this okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm not sure why I can't open that up all the way. So this right here is what we look at underneath the microscope. We've got a little bit of a fungal hyphae right here. You can tell because it's darker, it's different color than what's behind it. You've got your smooth edges on the side here. You can see these little lines here. They're the septa. We look for beneficial fungal components, and those are some of the indications of a beneficial fungal hyphae. Right here, we've got a protozoa. This is a testate amoeba. There's its mouth right there. This is not in great focus, but it gives you an idea. Here's a couple of testate amoeba. Procreating, budding, I guess. Again, you've got your ovular shape, your mouth right there. Another picture of fungal hyphae there. Here's some organic material. Down here at the bottom, in the bottom left, you've got your fungal spores. So you know that you've got an environment where potentially a fungal spore could then become hyphae. We don't count those when we're looking at this underneath there. We just observe and note it, so that we know that, okay, it may wake up at some point, but we can't count it right now.
Jason,
You
real
guys-
quick about
Yeah.
that. You had also mentioned plant exudates, and so that's where diversity of plants really helps, or certain plants will send certain exudates through a long evolutionary life cycle relationship. So if you plant certain plants, those exudates are going to wake up certain spores, and so that's why having diversity of microbes and diversity of plants helps to make it a more diverse system. And we can also identify harmful organisms, like harmful potential spores, like Fusarium, if you guys have ever heard of that. And then detrimental organisms are easily identifiable in your soil samples under the microscope. So it's really helpful in that way too.
Yep. Thank you. Shameless plug for cover crops and urban soil health right there. All right, here's another one, a picture of fungal hyphae, the septa. These are just good indications that you've got something really good going on in your soil. Here is a picture of a beneficial nematode. Okay, so we have different nematodes that are in the soil, and not all are bad. So we look for primarily the mouth. So if you look at the mouth right here, we see that it doesn't have any stylets or blades in its mouth. This right here is a bacterial feeding nematode. It also has these bulbous terminal bulbs down here, which help draw, the material in. But if you're looking at like a fungal feeder, then you're going to see just, it looks really like a blade. And what that does is it'll puncture into the fungus and then draw the nutrients out that way. Like a root feeding nematode, however, will have basically a stylet, a very, very, very thin puncturing type. Trying to think here.
Spear.
Spear, thank you. And then it's got these two little bulbs at the bottom, which help to penetrate into the root structure. When you have a healthy system, healthy root structure, then you've got a barrier out that's protecting the plant from the root feeder. The root feeder, is essentially not going to fight any harder than it has to get the food it needs. It's going to go where there's an unhealthy plant in order to do that. Okay, another reason to continue with building soil structure. This is one of my worm bins. This is from Hiawassee down in Tennessee. I'm trying to think. It might be like 18 inches, 2 feet deep, and it's about 3 feet wide. And we put, the compost in the top. They feed on it, and then there's a drill. If you look at this little piece right here, that draws the blade across and then drops it right down there. Here's my other one. This is Michigan Soil Works worm bin. It's, I think, like 3 or 4 feet wide and 16, or yeah, about 12 to 16 feet long. And you just put the worm or the material in the top here, and there's a big blade that you draw at the bottom to then pull it off and drop it down. Invariably you're going to get, like for me, since I use fairly chunky material, I screen it out. And so then I just kind of either put that on my trees or I put that on my, soil. It's still got great stuff. It's just not broken down to the point where you can put it in your house plants. I also don't screen it sometimes and just put it right at the base of my plants, or I'll create an extract out of it. Picture of some worms. Here's them in action. It's so meditative to watch that stuff. Here's one of the products that I have. It's a 1/4-inch screen. So basically just a box with a 1/4-inch hardware cloth, and I pour it over that, and then I mix it up. You look for different things like color and smell. So we look for in compost about a 70% dark cocoa color. Smell is earthy. If you start smelling, something that's a little bit yucky, then you've got something's not great. So just put it back in the worm bin, and then they'll cycle it through. Worms are phenomenal at sterilizing material. They'll, anything that touches their skin helps to sterilize it. Can
Sterilize
also compost.
harmful organisms.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yes, not not like putting bleach on anything, but what it does is it just cleans it up. Thanks, Tommy. So I also make compost in the greenhouse, or I used to until I got my tractor. And then just seems like too much work right now. But we use a thermometer to test the temperature, and we turn it when it gets to a certain temp after a certain amount of time, and that's how we determine when it's biocomplete. There's an 1/8 of an inch screened worm compost right there. Oh, here we go. Here's a microarthropod. So that'd be a higher level predator right there. Again, consuming, bacteria, fungi, moving things around, they'll move the microaggregates. Nematodes are really good at moving the microaggregates as well. They just kind of shuffle things around as they move through it. Here's more up close. Okay, let's see if we can't. Oh, so I started doing microgreens, and part of the reason why I did is because the place that I vend at the farm stop over in Bloomington, sometimes it had been there a while and it's dried out. So I was like, well, I can't sell that, so I just use it. So I mixed this with some biocomplete compost, like in a 50-50 blend, and this is what comes out of it. It's still viable, still very viable to use. And here's, ways that you can spread your extract. You know, it doesn't have to be this complicated. It could be something as simple as a watering can at the base. But this is what I played with my final project as well. My final project was to establish better pastures, and I was able to show an improvement in the compaction. I was able to get more depth with my soil puller and deeper with the penetrometer as compared to the control areas as well. F to B was trending up, not where I wanted it to be, but everything was done during the summertime when it was really hot. So I feel like it's one of those things that might take a year or two to really start showing some improvement. More microgreens. So, all right, let's move on to the rest of the oh, where is it? Oh, here it is. All right, here we go. So some research that you guys might find interesting, you know, in your spare time, showing Dr. David Johnson was able to show that there was a clear correlation between F to B and plant productivity. You know, Tommy's recording this, so if you guys need this, you can type in soil microbes, their powerful influence in agro ecosystems. It's a lot of charts when I looked at it, showing, you know, F to B. I think they did organic matter, nitrogen, and some other nutrients as well. But they found that F to B was a very viable option to use in farming. The first paper ever to show the nitrogen or the nutrient cycling was done by Dr. Russell Ingham. That's Elaine's husband. The interactions of bacteria, fungi, and their nematode grazers, their effects on nutrient cycling and plant growth. So it's pretty revolutionary paper there. And a couple of really interesting YouTube videos that you guys might find interesting. Dr. Tom Dykstra is an entomologist, and he got on with Dr. Lane Ingham, and they did Why Insects Avoid Healthy Plants. Pretty good introduction into bricks, you know, and what insects will target in a plant and why they target them. And then one of my favorites here is the proof that regenerative agriculture works. This was Nicholas Netien with Dr. Lane Ingham. It's basically a sales, so the whole video is a sales pitch for Soil Food Web. But for about a half an hour, he talks, and he's got an olive garden. Oh, not an olive garden. That sounds like he's in Greenwood or something. He's got an olive field grove where he grows olives and makes olive oil. It's not a restaurant. Anyway, he was able to prove that using these methods made for a better product. He's making medical grade olive oil better than what medical grade is required to be. I think medical grade is like 250 milligrams of polyphenols that's in it, and he was able to get it to just under 1,000. I think he was able at one point to even get up to 4,000. So it's a lot. So anyway, his quote that I really, really, really enjoy is the answer is to always add life. Whenever they had a problem on their farm, they would try to figure out how they could add life to the system to then create a beneficial environment. This is a very good listen. I highly recommend it. So, what I found so far using, you know, these methods, I mean, like a buddy of mine up in Michigan, he's got a food plot. I taught him how to make the extract. He was able to show in a very sandy soil to build, you know, structure. Unfortunately, what happened is the deer came in and ate it all, you know. So we know it works. We know it works. Got a SARE grant I'm working with Megan on, and I went out to one of the growers, and we tested the soil and the side-by-side comparison of the structure that's built On the treatment side that we did this year, we were able to show that it just getting down into the ground a little bit better with the soil sample puller. Other people have used my products. Saying that it, improves, what was he when he grew radishes is what it was. They were able to come up quicker and bigger and stronger. Um, so yeah, I mean, for myself, I mean, I obviously I like what it does, but that's the only thing I use, so I can't really compare it to anything else. And shameless plug here, I'll be vending at the Small Farms Conference this year. So if you guys happen to want to bring a soil sample for me to look at or a compost sample, I would be happy to do so. We can kind of geek out there. So, any questions?
That's awesome, Jason. We do have a couple of questions or comments too. Dave says, I like those black baskets for your BioComplete, better than woven wire. And for Dave, for you in the chat, I posted the link to them, GeoBins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're remarkably convenient. They're like 30, $35 or something like that. And you can take them anywhere. You can give them to friends and they can move up to near Crawfordsville and then take them with her and then use them to make compost as well. So they go anywhere.
All right. And then we have Charlotte who asks, can you contrast the fungal to bacterial content of passively composting horse manure to the compost generated by your worm system?
Yeah, we could take a look at it. Would love to. Love to see what it is. You can do a sample. If it sits long enough, it's going to break down. But it's also going to have a lot of weeds. That's the reason why I like what they call thermophilic composting method, using the heat cycle from the bacteria basically reproducing to help sterilize, or yeah, it does. It sterilizes uh, your harmful bacteria, and it also sterilizes weed seeds as well. But yeah, we could take a look at that.
Another question from Megan. All of these biological markers are really fascinating, but how does a grower take this information into the real work of commercial composts that are available to them?
So how do you use the beneficials with the commercial products?
Megan, you want to chime in?
Sure. I guess I'm just curious, like the vast majority of our small scale growers don't have a high quality compost available to them.
Right.
And so they're not going to be able to access microscopy for a commercial compost, nor are those commercial composters going to give them
Right.
microscopy results.
Yep.
They barely give them chemical analysis. So I guess the question is more along the lines of like, what can a small grower do to maybe increase the biological components of, say, that commercial compost that is available to them?
So you could amend it with, good compost. You could call me and I'll sell you a whole bunch of compost.
Easy.
Problem solved, right? No, that's a really good question. I don't have an answer. I mean, I've got an idea, and the idea is to just continually make extract and keep pouring it on, because that poor compost is still going to be a food source for biology. It's just not going to have all the biology you want in it. One of the ways you can tell is just look at it. I mean, what's the color? Did you pick it up? Does it have structure? If it's black and it doesn't smell like anything, it's not great. It's probably got mostly bacteria in it, maybe some fungal components. But you could make the extract, and again, you don't have to make it complicated. A ball jar with, a little bit of good stuff in there, and then, you shake it up and then you pour it on and put it right on the roots, and you don't even worry about straining it. Just put it right there. And you do it enough times, the biology is going to be kicked in. Again, the plant is going to communicate what it needs as well. So you're just kind of working with the plant right there by adding a little bit um, more biology, more beneficial biology, more diverse biology. So that's one way to do it, to build that up. Just adding extracts to it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
And does your biological compost differ greatly in pH than some manure-based composts or leaf-based composts?
I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know what theirs is. I got a sample. Give me a second here. Oh, here we go. So this is a compost analysis that I did last year for Amy Serberg for part of that SARE grant. She wanted to make sure, it was good. I thought, oh, it'd be kind of cool to figure it out. The pH was 7.6, for the compost itself. Is that going to change, when you add the compost onto the soil itself? How much is that going to change? Again, the plant is going to tell the biology what it needs, and that's going to change the pH at the root. What it does to the areas around it, I can't say. And I can't tell you what pH is for other composts or horse compost or horse manure. I just don't have that answer. That's another
Um,
SARE grant.
Yeah, well, I think I'm asking because with our growers who utilize the deep compost method, often the composts that they're sourcing are manure based, and that is causing a lot of pH creep over time because they're very high pHs. And I wasn't sure if like a higher biological componented compost would work better in that system because it's a healthier system, and so you're not going to have that pH creep perhaps because the phosphorus is getting mitigated throughout the soil, et cetera, just
Yeah.
I
So-
should stop asking questions because there's a
No,
lot
no.
more other ones.
Yeah, no, that's a deep topic, Megan. The answer is I don't know. I would love to find out. I mean, but I mean, my stuff is expensive, and that's why I think using an extract would be a really good way to at least start with those deep beds.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
Yeah. So Charlotte, would you mind unmuting and you can ask him what you were about the horse manure?
Yeah, I mean, we have all this manure, like you said, a lot of growers have access to manure-based compost. So we have this huge pile and we don't always get it spread. There's some in the back of the pile that's, 3 or 4 years sitting there just passively composting. And I'm not really asking specifically, but in general, it kind of refers to the previous person because it's like, okay, what is creeping up in our soil because is pH creeping up? Some people have told me calcium might be creeping up. Should we, I mean, we have a little bit of a worm thing going and we try to do compost tea and stuff, but how do we utilize that on-site resource as opposed to buying compost, right? So we want to
Right.
utilize that on-site resource and either pep it up a little or add some kind of counter supplements to the manure compost, something to make that our base, but maybe we have to tweak it. And I'm just asking in general,
Right.
or if you can redirect us to some resources of what we need to tweak that so that that can then be our basic compost source. I mean, because that's what we got.
I mean, I could teach you how to make compost. I could teach you how to use that as a resource. It does take time. It takes a thermometer. It takes, depending on how much you've got, either by hand or with a tractor. Um,
We have a tractor and we have a thermometer. We've got all the stuff. We just need to get a
you just
little
need
more
the
savvy, and
recipe.
we've got a microscope.
Oh, nice.
So we just need sort of some guidance as to how to, make what we have better,
Mhm.
I guess.
No, I think you've got everything in place. I think you just need to know how to make the compost and know when it's good and what to look for.
Yes.
The only thing you wouldn't have would be the ability to find out the exact ratio of what your F to B is. But I mean, honestly, if you just look underneath the microscope and you're like, okay, I see this, I know what markers are looking good, then I can use this fairly confidently. Again, the plant is going to tell you what it needs. It's got to do its part. That's what my mentor said. Plant kind of has to do its part too. It's got to tell you what it needs. And that's where that loop is going to go in. But it just depends on materials. You might need to add some wood chips, and you might need to get a thermometer and then show you how to do basically a tractor turn pile, which is really
Yeah,
fun.
that would be great.
It's really fun too.
We are running out of time for Jason to answer questions. So Tanvi, you can go ahead and choose that last question for Jason to answer before we move on.
Yeah, and feel free to contact Jason at any point with his contact information. And he can definitely talk to you guys more about this and nerd out. So do you have access to leaves, phosphor, or this is a reply. What about if you build it, they will come philosophy, employing conservation practices like reduced tillage, adding residues, cover cropping? Will you get to a similar point of creating habitat that's fairly well balanced with bacterial fungi?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say I'm going to assume yes. And the reason why I assume that is because if you look at a forest, that's what it does. It moves it towards that succession. Did I miss any part of that question, Tanvi?
No, I think a point that it helps is it's not linear, right? We don't live in a world of linear movement. So succession works in you can build it up and build it up, but there's always going to be a disturbance, and you can use tillage and non-conservation practices to bring back that disturbance, because sometimes you might have a really high fungal bacterial ratio and you are trying to grow brassicas, and it's like, I don't need fungi for brassicas. They'll actually be stressed out with fungi. So you can do a certain type of disturbance or create the right kind of amendment. So like you can use different crops, cover crops, different plants. And that's a little bit of the research that's happening is even the soil food web is trying to find out what fungal to bacterial ratio do each specific types of plants, vegetables, orchards, what do they like? And then that list is starting to get compiled. It's kind of what Ellie meant from that.
Yeah, there is just a lot of stuff that we don't know,
Cool. Well, you guys, thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah.
Very
Feel free to reach out. Phone is actually probably the easiest and most convenient way for me. So if you got a question, shoot a text, give me a call, and we'll chat.
Mhm. Awesome. So go ahead and stop sharing if you don't mind.
Okay. And I've got to go ahead and leave. And thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So now it's time for regional updates. And so we have the annual conference that just happened. Woohoo. So the ISWCD, Indiana Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts, held their annual conference in Indianapolis. And we had a lot of great speakers and presenters, people come out. Urban Soil Health had a booth there. So there was farmer Jimmy Emmons and gerontologist Aaron Martin, director of Fresh X RX Oklahoma, who talked about a lot of nutrition and how does that correlate with soil health. And then soil health and human well-beings are all one thing. They're interconnected and they're interrelated. So just a lot of beautiful messaging about how to take care of that foundation that is our soil. And we had at least 200 people in the audience, which was absolutely amazing. Like, it was amazing to walk into that conference room and see that many people show up for this. And soil health, water health, and a lot of organizations showed up for it. Does anyone want to say anything else about that before I move on? All right. So I'll just kick it off with the regional updates. Northwest, I'm still touring a lot. And getting word of things that are happening around the region. So thank you all of you for, doing all of your work in the Northwest. The Wabash River Enhancement Corporation, REC, which basically offers, has a 319 grant for a large watershed in around Tippecanoe and a few other neighboring counties. Just shout out to them for offering a lot of funding and expertise using the Tippecanoe Soil and Water Conservation District and local NRCS to get urban spaces to do better water retention, create pollinator gardens, green roofs, prairie conversion, and all of that plays into soil health so beautifully. So hearing about that, and then they're also doing large scale cover cropping, doing other mitigations for water. So yeah, off to the Northeast.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Terry Thyssen with Northeast. So my highlight for January, in January, on one of the coolest days of the month, I partnered with organizations in Marshall County, Purdue Extension, Soil and Water, NRCS, FSA, Farm Bureau, Plymouth Farmers Market, and CCSI. And we hosted a day-long event titled Soil Health in High Tunnels. And we started the morning with me. I discussed the basics of soil science, soil health, and then we dove into soil health principles and discussed the soil health practices relevant to high tunnel and small scale growers. People were engaged and excited to learn more about the topics. And after the talk, during which there was an emphasis on cover crops, and my joke about not farming naked didn't land as well as it normally does, but that's fine. Growers flocked to the table and we had our cover crop seed samples for them to try at home for themselves. And it was neat to see so many people interested in trying cover crops and talking about soil health practices. Next, we had Kara and Troy from NRCS discussing the NRCS practices and programs to give people an opportunity to learn more about NRCS and how they provide technical and financial assistance to growers. As always, it's a treat to have them involved in spreading the good word. And then after a delicious lunch, because that's one of the highlights of conferences is having tasty food, is we heard from FSA and some of their programs. And then we rounded off the day with the keynote speaker, Dan Perkins from Perkins Good Earth Farm, talking about his farm and the practices he uses in Northwest Indiana. People were inspired to learn more about the practices, and he went into detail on how he manages many of the soil health principles throughout his farm. And it was really fantastic to hear many of the things discussed in the morning being brought up again in the afternoon with Dan. And then we ended the day with a farmer panel. Sadly, one of our farmers was unable to make it because of illness, but Dan and Titus, another local grower, had a great conversation. We had participation from the crowd. There was lots of thoughtful questions. At one point, I found myself with a huge goofy grin, just observing and listening to the conversations between the growers. And really, that's what it's all about, having a grower to grower idea sharing and troubleshooting. It was such a fantastic day, and I was so gosh darn excited to see so many people come out to little old Marshall County to learn more about soil health. It was just such a great day. So that's my update and my highlight from this last month.
All right, Southwest.
Oh, shoot. Well, I had another picture on there, but it didn't seem to save. But this past January, at the end of January, I was asked to speak at a Veterans in Farming program. They had their winter conference held in Bloomington and Monroe County. I gave a soil health session, similar, I think, to what Terry had just given. In Marshall County, we talked about soil health basics, soil health science, and the EQIP funding that was available for those small growers. There were many vendors at this event. NRCS was there as well, so I was able to leave some things at their table for the small grower. But all in all, it was a really great event. I think I had about 40 attendees just in my session. For the whole conference, I think there was like 75 to 100 attendees. So a really well attended conference. And yeah, I think that's my update.
Awesome, thanks.
Hey all, it's Megan in the Southeast. 2025 just started off with a bang. I'm really excited about working with Muscatatuck Park on their learning garden, and had a great time at the Great Lakes IPM meeting. But the thing that I'm really excited for that we've been working hard on as a team is our Living Farm series, where we're going to be touring farms, 9 in this first series, to talk about conservation and soil extension, season extension. And our very first event is coming up later this month, actually at Jason's farm, Integrated Elements farm. We're having a high tunnel build and learn. So if you're interested, that is in Bartholomew County. It'll be February 27th from 9 to 3, and we're going to be working with Nifty Hoops to put up a farm in a day. You can go ahead and check out that QR code, or you can RSVP just so we know numbers and any possible food sensitivities by emailing me. Additionally, we're going to be having more of these high tunnel build and learns throughout the state. So if it's just too far for you to travel, one will be coming to a city near you. So if you're interested or you have a suggestion about where we could do one, if you know a farmer or you are a farmer who's putting up a high tunnel and wants to do a build and learn, just reach out. We're happy to support that. So that's all that I have in the Southeast, and I look forward to working with you all throughout the year. Thanks all.
Thank you. And Ellie's going to talk about this.
Yeah, probably you have received one of these, or if you haven't, I know we have a mixed audience in the crowd. I just want to keep plugging our new booklet on top 10 small farm conservation practices. So this is a physical document if you wish, and if you're in a field office, or also a virtual document accessed by that link. I'll pop it in the chat also. And it goes through top 10 practices. Again, there are many more than those top 10, but we wanted a starting place to create a consistent message amongst all of our ICP partners as well as our growers about the opportunities of conservation on small farms. So I see this really as an outreach tool more than like a technical training document, but it should hopefully create conversations in your field offices about those technical practices, how to do mulching, how to do cover crop mixes, low tunnels, etc. And then all of these are also aligned with practices that are eligible via EQIP for financial assistance and cost share. And so we want to, ask the questions. And if you're not sure about the ins and outs of applying those practices on farm, please reach out to us. Let's coordinate, collaborate, again, create those dialogues amongst Soil and Water, ANR, Extension, ourselves, NRCS, ag professionals, and growers to make sure we're getting conservation on the land, which is our end goal. So yeah, a hard copy will go out or has already gone out to every county SWCD office, an additional one for NRCS and one for Extension ANR. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so growing forward, here are some upcoming events. We have Indiana Organic Grain Farmer meeting in West Lafayette on the 19th, the Marble Seed Conference in La Crosse, Wisconsin from the 20th to the 22nd, and Intro to Soil Health, which is a virtual Zoom on the 25th. 27th is the High Tunnel Build and Learn in Columbus, like Megan said. 4th to 5th in March is the Purdue Small Farms Conference in Danville. The 12th is the Common Ground Seeding screening in Danville. Common Ground is a film, it's being shown. March 18th is the Soil Con Syracuse. March 19th to the 20th is the Pollinator Steward Certificate in Greenville, Indiana. And July 25th, 2025 to April of 2026 is the Living Farm Series, which is happening statewide. Feel free to go on our website. It'll all be posted there. The partner shares, would anyone like to come off of mute and share anything that we should add?
Hi, this is Heather Bacher with Women for the Land. I just wanted to share with you all that we are continuing to work on putting together women's learning circles across the state. So I'll put our website in the chat as well as my contact information. If you have any interest in working with us on doing these outreach programs for this important part of our community, just please let me know, and I hope to work with you at some point in the future.
Thanks, Heather. We have Ashley Adair in the chat who says, if you are an ag professional planning to attend the Indiana Organic Grain Farmer meeting, you can use the code SARE25 to attend for a $0 registration fee. We have 7 spots left. That's in the chat if you want to get the code. Mariah, you all are also putting on their pollinator steward certification for farmers and gardeners, and that's also in the chat.
Yeah, you highlighted it in your upcoming events, so thank you very much. I just wanted to give a shout out to Megan, who's going to be presenting at that, and yeah, thanks for your continued partnership.
Of course. Anything else anyone else wants to put out there? All right. If you guys have any other questions, you can feel free to ask them. Our next meeting is going to be March 11th. And after that, in April, we're going to be changing to the first Wednesday of the month. So as long as you guys are on our Urban Updates website, a recurring meeting, you'll be able to find that there or on our website. The topic is going to be soil health for vegetable farmers, what we learned from 100 farms, who will be taught by Natalie Hoydal, if I said that right, Terry, University of Minnesota Extension. Any questions? Terry also posted sign up and view previous newsletters on the chat, the link to that. Ellie has the link on for the top 10 small farm practices on there. Anything else, y'all? Otherwise, we'll call it a day.
I just want to point out that if you guys don't have the chat available, definitely look at the chat. There are a bunch of great resources on the chat. And it looks like, Mary, you've got your hand up. What do you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that pollinator partnership, in addition to the amazing workshop that Mariah will be hosting, now has a new series called Working for Wildlife, where we're highlighting farm bill programs and conservation practices that support pollinator habitat and pollinator friendly practices. So we have a subscription link in the chat and links to our 2 first videos in that series.
It's very exciting. All right. As always, contact any of us in your region, or info@urbansoilhealth.com for any of your questions. Thanks for showing up, you guys, and thank you for all the work that you all are doing in your communities. All right, have a good day.